I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Why, Johnny Ringo. You look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Fight's not with you, Holiday.
I beg to differ, sir. We started a game we never got to finish. Play for blood, remember?
I was just fooling about.
I wasn't. And this time, legal.
All right, Lunger. Let's do it. Say when.
This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag.
Why'd they eat the dude's heart?
The Indians?
Yeah.
Take his power? I don't know.
Again, if you didn't know any better, if you didn't have science behind you, it makes sense. I'm just saying.
Hey, come on, dude.
It makes sense.
Why did Jeremiah Johnson eat crow liver?
Because he was dying. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping for. He needed sustenance. Because Brian knows he's that crow up there. Good eating. No one's ever once thought that. If you have a crow on your plate, you've made poor life decisions or life's gotten really rough on you.
Crow Indian.
Oh.
Crow Indian liver.
Oh.
Like the human livers.
Well, if I had to eat a person, Brian, I would imagine the liver's probably the safest thing to eat on that.
Okay, look, all I'm saying is I think it was vengeful. That's why I did it. It was to prove a point, perhaps to take their power. The liver was a sort of a sacred part of the man, and he's like going to desecrate it in a way. So yeah, and I don't know, scares the hell out of people, and there's some nutrients. It's a superfood.
Yeah, I think all of those things are true.
He's half animal.
And if he just happens to gain power...
I've never seen a dog that didn't like liver, so...
That's true.
They just freaking are rabid for it. Look, I like liver. Always have.
Nope.
Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined tonight by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
Well, thank you.
Okay, today's podcast, we're getting back into the book, Boone, a biography by Robert Morgan. I've lost track of which episode we're on, but if you are just joining the show for the first time, I highly recommend going back and checking out all the podcast episodes about this book, about this story. Okay, so right now Boone has they had the little truce outside the fort, right? The little parlay or negotiations for peace or whatever it was, and that turned into a wrestling match / gun show, and they all had to. So basically, they all sat around the Indian chief Blackfish. He kind of set up a situation where there was 2 Indians to every white man.
3 Indians.
At
One
first.
each. Oh, yeah.
But then Boone's like, hey, I see a lot of warriors, and you said you need all these Indians here because you need so many chiefs. And he's like, oh, okay. And so Blackfish sent some away, and so it was just 2 Indians per every white guy.
Oh, just 2 to 1.
2 to 1. It was 8 white guys, 18 or 9 white guys, 18 Indians or something like that. Okay, so they all sit around, powwow, they hang out, they talk. They're within 60 yards of the fort. And what happens next at the end, they get into a brawl. 2 Indians tried to wrestle 1 white guy down. But the fort, as soon as they saw something shady, they started firing bullets into the crowd or into the Indians, and that caused them to let go, and then the white guys ran back to the fort. Basically, that's kind of the gist of it. Squire Boone was shot in the shoulder in the skirmish. I think other than that, Boone was shot in the ankle. When was that? Ooh, that was a while back before.
Yeah, but still, every time I think about an ankle shot.
Anyway, so he's a bit wounded, and but he's been rocking no problem. It's been a while. I think it's been a year actually, because they never. Well, I don't remember now. Lost track. Anyway, point is, they ran inside the fort. So we're gonna resume. We're gonna read a little bit from where we left off, just to catch people up, and then we'll get into what happens next. It says, after Boone and the other negotiators escaped from the treaty site and reached safety inside the fort, the firing from the fort and from the Indians in the field began in earnest. Young Ambrose Coffey lay exposed on the southeast blockhouse, watching the events unfold. Suddenly, bullets began peppering around him, and when he dropped under cover and examined his clothes, he found many bullet holes, though his body was untouched. No less than 14 bullet holes,
Yes.
Brent, were made in his clothes when he tumbled down into the bastion unhurt.
Yeah, I remember that. Neo. Yeah, but no way. I call BS. I'm calling baloney.
And just for reference, folks, this is 1778 to 1779. We're in that window, and yeah, they are surrounded by 400 Indians or something like that, and a little bit of British, a little bit of this and that. But they've been sent there by Hamilton, who is the governor of Detroit, who is basically governor under the authority of the British Empire. And he did offer a generous treaty that if all the settlers in Kentucky just turned themselves over to the British, that they could have all these lands and all this stuff, and the king would take care of it. All they have to do is switch sides.
Keep their military positions.
And to his credit, Blackfish seemed that he didn't want to have a fight. He didn't want to kill and didn't want to get into it if he didn't have to.
Those negotiations dragged on forever. Weeks.
They went on. And so here we are. Anyway, Neo dodges the bullets. Suddenly, the firing on both sides was deafening. The air filled with the stench of burned gunpowder. Children cried and women screamed, thinking the fort was about to be stormed. Dogs began howling in the compound, and cattle bawled and horses ran to and fro, whinnying in terror. Cattle stampeded from one side of the enclosure to the other. Squire Boone, remember, he was shot in the shoulder in the midst of this, took his position at a loophole, but found the pain from his wound so intense he could hardly shoulder his rifle. Can you imagine? Because these things, it's not like these rifles don't kick. They're just like essentially...
They're shooting a giant bullet.
They're a handheld cannon. They have a little explosion inside, and it shoots a bullet out of a cannon barrel.
And these things are like, not only that, but just the act of holding it up. They're as long as these guys are tall, basically.
Yeah.
So you imagine like the stress of holding that up.
So it says, but the kick into the shoulder, if you've been shot there, it's like getting kicked in the wound every time.
I'm not doing it. I'm shooting offhand and hoping for the best.
When things calmed down a little, Daniel cut the bullet from Squire's shoulder, but the wound was so deep, Squire was forced to retire to his bed. However, he kept an axe beside the bed to defend himself should the fort be taken.
That's me. 100%, dude. Like, sure, I'll go and get my triage, but, stay strapped or get clapped.
Luckily, the tomahawk wound on Boone's back was neither deep nor serious. Remember, he got hit by a pipe tomahawk? Which is a tomahawk you can smoke a joint out of. Or whatever.
It's a peace pipe, bro.
Luckily, the tomahawk, wasn't serious. Boone took his place directing both fire and defensive activity. That afternoon, the Indians made a charge toward the stockade as if they planned to scale the walls, but under the heavy fire, they retreated. The many trees, including the divine elm and stumps near the palisade, afforded the attackers ample cover. The banks of the Lick Branch near the fort provided a blind where Indians could conceal themselves, as did an especially large sycamore log lying on the edge of the hollow. As the firing continued, the men in the fort saw another weakness of their location. The ridges on both sides of the river were high enough to provide a view into the enclosure.
So they have a view into the...
Yeah, if they get up high on the ridge.
Well, that's not very smart.
An ambitious marksman from either side of the river could fire into the fort and could, of course, spy on the inhabitants so they could get view into the fort.
Doesn't seem like a very good place to set that up.
John Gass later said they shot into it from off both hills. The ridges were too far away for shooting with any accuracy, especially the south ridge, but the random shots killed livestock and added to the panic. It still sucks. Bullets flying, lobbing them over the wall.
I was going to say, man, it doesn't matter if they got real accuracy. Do you want anyone throwing bullets your way at any time?
It was real luck that the British had not supplied the Shawnees with swivel guns or cannon. Even one piece of artillery might have doomed the settlers. Though primarily concerned with defending their lives and their families during the siege, The people of Boonesboro knew that a good deal depended on what happened there. With the new state government far away, engaged in a desperate war for survival and independence, the settlers were on their own. Boonesboro was the best known of the Kentucky settlements. If it fell, Harrodsburg and Logan Station and the smaller enclaves in the wilderness would likely go also. If the forts were lost, Kentucky would be lost, and the British would control the Ohio Valley and be within striking distance of the settlements on the Holston and Clinch and Watauga rivers. Otis K. Rice says, the determined defenders of Boonesboro did more than preserve their own station and others of central Kentucky. They enabled highly secret plans conceived earlier in 1778 by George Rogers Clark to reach fruition. Those inside the fort did not know that Clark, after taking Kaskaskia and Cahokia along the Mississippi and the British fort at Vincennes in the Illinois country, they planned an attack on Detroit to break the British hold on the region. So they didn't know that Clark, after taking these areas along the Mississippi and the British fort in Vincennes in Illinois country, that they planned to go after Detroit after they beat those three areas. They were going to head into Detroit to break the British hold. So it says they didn't know that in the fort, but they were part of what was making it possible. In theory, Richard Calloway was the ranking officer at Boonesboro, but Major William Bailey Smith had been commissioned commander of the fort after Boone was captured by the Shawnees.
Thank heavens.
From most reports, it appears that Boone was the actual leader, though. The firing from the outside kept up steadily through the first day and night, and then the second day. Get here. It says the Shawnee have been commissioned. Okay, it says the Shawnees and British had a considerable supply of powder and lead, and they used it willingly. The walls of the fort cracked and thudded with the impact of bullets. Piles of harvested flax were scattered in the fields nearby, and during night the Indians spread the flax along a fence that led to the edge of the fort. The next day they lit the flax to burn like a fuse that would set the fort on fire. Some men inside the fort risked their lives to crawl out under the kitchen wall and tear down the fence adjoining the palisades. Yeesh. They got back inside and the fence burned up, causing no harm. So they just detached the fence.
Kicked it over.
And on Friday, September 11, things were quiet in the morning. Some wondered if the Shawnees had retreated, but the gates remained closed. And later, those in the fort looked out and saw the river was muddy below the fort and heard the sound of digging and roots being cut. They're trying to go under the wall! A long cedar pole was seen moving, as though loosening the ground out of sight by the river. They guessed the Indians and British were digging a trench or maybe a tunnel toward the fort and under the wall to blow up a section of the stockade, then rush into the enclosure. Or maybe they planned to tunnel under the wall and attack in the darkness. It was decided to dig a counter-tunnel or trench that would intercept the tunnel from the river. At the same time, the men in the fort built a 6-foot structure up over Henderson's kitchen from which to observe the enemy's mining. Intense volleys were exchanged all night while the opposing trenches were being dug.
No, I'm not. I watch Vietnam documentaries about tunnel warfare. I'm out, guys. Heck no, dude. So they want to dig a counter tunnel.
Yeah, dude, that's what they're doing. A slave named London, who was owned
like a book title
by Richard Henderson and was an excellent marksman, crept out of the fort in the trench to get a better shot at the Indians nearby.
Yeah, great idea. Nothing bad's going to happen to him next.
In the dark, either side could aim only at the flashes or sounds of the other's weapons.
Mm-hmm.
London's gun refused to fire, and an Indian aimed at the snap of the hammer or the flash in the pan and killed him. London was a popular figure at Boonesboro, and his death was a serious loss to the fort. In the heavy firing of the second night, a Dutchman named David Bundren an accomplished and courageous marksman, was looking through a porthole on the southwest side of the fort when a bullet struck him in the forehead.
Turtle up, folks.
He died slowly, blood and brains leaking out of the wound, as his wife deliriously, with grief, thanked God that the ball didn't hit him in the eye.
Why? If you get a headshot, that's like the whole benefit of getting shot in the head is you die quickly. If I get shot in the head and I don't die quickly, that's upsetting.
He died before daybreak, just as Boone was ordering his men to cease firing and save their ammunition. A Dutchman named David Bundren, an accomplished and courageous marksman, was looking through a porthole on the southwest side of the fort when a bullet struck him in the forehead.
Helmet,
Man.
bro.
Jemima Boone was wounded slightly on one of the first days of the siege. She was constantly running back and forth carrying ammunition and drinks of water to the men. Standing in an open door, she felt what might have been a slap on her backside. In fact, it was a bullet from the ridge across the river, so nearly spent it made only a shallow wound and fell out when she jerked the cloth of her dress. In the 19th century, historians had trouble mentioning the wound because of its location. The bullet was sometimes described as hitting the fleshy part of her back.
The fleshy part of her back.
It's got to stay proper in this Victorian era.
Hey, that's my favorite part of the back.
During the excitement of the siege, profanity was shouted between the fort and the enemy, but because of the delicacy of Victorian scholars such as Lyman Draper and Reverend John Dabney Shane, who were later writers, little of the exact phrasing has come down to us. The blackguarding, as shouted insults were called, is referred to, but not the words actually used. The most notable of the cussers was perhaps John Holder, son-in-law of the formidable Miss Calloway.
Formidable.
It's so funny that Richard Calloway has a sailor for a wife. Like, he's just a mean man, petty, and his wife is nasty. Holder was one of those who dashed outside the fort to put out a fire the Indians had set, and as he made his sprint and quelled the blaze, he hurled colorful language at the attackers. When he came back inside, safe but still swearing, Miss Calloway reprimanded him for his oaths, saying it would be more becoming to pray rather than to swear. "I've got no time to pray." God damn it. Holder snapped.
Amen. I didn't see you out there kicking over that fiery fence.
From the beginning, the Shawnees had made attempts to set the fort on fire, which is what you've been saying the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Without artillery, fire was their best weapon against the log palisades. I mean, haven't we seen the British? They just light like arrows on fire. I watched Robin Hood.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Doesn't seem
shoot a whole bunch of them things into the fence. They're all Indians. Don't they got arrows?
That's what I would
Dip
imagine.
it in oil and just light her up.
That's what I would think.
The movies. The efforts to set the enclosure ablaze intensified on the third night. John Gass would later say, they shot arrows. There we go. They shot arrows with powder in a little rag and a little punk. Huh. They set only one house on fire, the only shingled roof house there was there, Colonel Henderson's. Warrior after warrior ran up to the fort and hurled torches made of hickory bark and gunpowder over the walls. Most of the torches fell harmlessly to the ground. Many Indians were killed because of the torches they carried made them easy targets in the dark. Even if they carried the torches behind blankets, they had to expose themselves to throw them. When the burning arrows hit roofs, they could be swept off with poles because the roofs sloped inward, as Nathan Boone explained to Draper. So they'd throw them up there, they just wouldn't stick.
Mm-hmm. Did you say did you say punk?
Yeah, the wording is they shot. This is a quote from John Gass. He said John Gass is he's probably 17, 18, something like that. They shot arrows with powder in a little rag and a little punk. In a little rag and a little punk. I don't know what that means. I was wondering the same thing.
To the rescue, Google.
So when they threw the torches on the roofs were slanted in toward the fort, so they just rolled into the fort and then they just put them out. Anticipating the attempts to set the walls and roofs on fire, Squire Boone, always a resourceful tinkerer, had made squirt guns out of spare rifle barrels and bags of water that could quench blazes several feet away. Did you hear that?
No.
Anticipating the attempts to set the walls and roofs on fire, Squire Boone, always a tinkerer, an inventor, Brent, had made squirt guns out of spare rifle barrels and bags of water that could quench blazes several feet away.
So hold on. He rigged up like a ghetto bagpipe with a rifle. That's how I'm imagining this. I can't see that any other way.
Squire had even made a wooden cannon with a gum tree log hollowed out with an auger and wrapped with iron bands filled with powder and buckshot. While Squire was recovering from his wound, others took aim with his cannon at the Indians in the field. The results were not notable, and on the second try, the whole thing exploded into splinters.
Yep. They did that on Mythbusters.
From then on, the Indians would taunt the fort, asking, "Why don't you fire your big wooden gun again?" As the trench from the river got closer, men climbed on the new platform over Henderson's kitchen and hurled stones at the diggers. The rocks falling on their heads infuriated the Indian tunnelers. "Come out and fight like men," they shouted, and not try to kill them with stones like children. It cracks me up, dude, because there ain't no way I'm going to be taunted to come out and fight you when I can just hit you with rocks and annoy the crap out of you. An old woman, Miss South, who heard the Indians cussing, asked the men not to throw any more rocks, for they might hurt the Indians and make them mad, and then they will seek revenge.
Bring it.
The men roared with laughter and kept repeating her warning as a joke for days. Though he was not a digger, Pompey, the translator, seemed to participate in the tunnel building and was seen to watch the fort from a trench leading into the tunnel. His head would pop up one place, duck as men from the fort fired, then pop up at another place while they reloaded. A number of men had fired and missed him. His game was to show that he was too quick for them. The rifleman reloaded, and each aimed at a different place along the rim of the trench. Remember how Pompey, he's a little arrogant, cocky, struts around, he's full of himself? At least that's what they say. Here he is popping his head up. Too quick. Too quick.
That never turns bad for anyone ever, Brian.
Finally, Pompey's head appeared just where a rifle was pointed, the trigger was squeezed, and his head appeared no more. According to Draper, it was William Collins who pulled the trigger. In other accounts, it was William Hancock who killed the black interpreter. The men in the fort began calling, "Where's Pompey?" The Indians answered in English or Shawnee, "Pompey gone hog hunting," or "Pompey ne pan," meaning Pompey is asleep. Before the siege was over, they would admit, "Pompey ni poo," meaning Pompey is dead. Rumor grew later that it was Boone who killed Pompey, but this is almost certainly not true. Boone was too busy organizing and directing the efforts to lie in wait for hours to shoot the interpreter. However, another story of the siege may have some truth in it. It seems a Shawnee brave liked to climb a tree within sight of the fort and turn, lifting his breechclout, then pat his backside, saying, without need of translator, "Kiss my ass." The tree was almost 200 yards away, and though several men had shot at the taunting brave, they had missed. The legend is that Boone took his finest rifle, which Draper says he called Tick Licker, because it could flick a tick off a bear's snout at 100 yards, put in an extra load of powder, and resting the barrel on a loophole sill, took careful aim at the Shawnee mocker. When he touched the trigger, the brave fell from the tree, crashing through the limbs until the body thumped on the ground. The butt patter was seen no more, Draper says. Such a fatal shot deterred the other Indians from venturing up to remove the body till after nightfall. Oh, such a fatal shot, scared the rest of them, so they didn't pick up the body till after nightfall, and the hogs, meanwhile, rooted around the corpse. It is a colorful story, but again, it is unlikely Boone was the rifleman, and the fort had many superb marksmen.
I don't know why, but Tick Licker just feels like I said something wrong.
Hey, man, yeah. That's the name of a gun. We need a shirt that says Tick Licker.
Tick Licker. You want to see a cool Tick Licker? Check this out. Well, I was trying to find black powder guns. Have you seen a punt gun before?
Wow. That looks like an American flagpole.
It's ridiculous.
That does not look like a good idea.
No, and for people that are looking, it's like two people are holding up this gun. It's like a legit hand cannon. And the thing, it's like a giant shotgun.
Says an American flag, likely an early version of the Stars and Stripes, with the stars in a circle called the 1777 national flag, flew on a 50-foot pole at the center of the fort. Firing at the pole hundreds of times, the Indians finally broke the top off.
Not Old Glory.
Those inside took down the pole, replaced the flag, and repaired and on a repaired shaft and planted it in the sky again. The flag remained there.
Shoot it down again. Waste that ammo. Let's go.
One of the stranger anecdotes of the siege concerns a Shawnee warrior who had a wooden false face decorated to look like an Indian wearing war paint. Hidden behind a large sycamore log about 100 yards from the fort, he raised the false face on a stick to draw fire from the fort, then dropped the false face and fired at the exposed marksman in the loophole.
Smart. I'll give him that.
He did this a number of times until finally the men in the fort caught on. Watching the log carefully, a marksman aimed not at the false face, but at the visible part of the body holding it up. When he fired, the Indian crawled away, and the painted wooden face was seen no more above the log. Draper tells us after the siege, signs of blood were found at the spot, as well as the veritable false face punctuated with 2 or 3 bullet holes. It's like everybody's so smart. What's so crazy is, how this is 1778, 1777. It's just strange to me. 79. Yeah, they're good shots. Back then, there's still 50, 60, 100-yard shots, 200-yard shots they're making with the weapons they have, and they're fairly freaking accurate.
Mm-hmm. Iron sights. That's crazy.
Somehow in my head, I just didn't think they had that kind of range, but with accuracy. But I think at the very outset of the book, it was saying some of people in Boone's time could shoot 300 yards. As far as 300 yards, but generally speaking, they're pretty proficient out to 2, the really good ones. But that's wild. You're talking about a round bullet and a, powder and horn and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Back to the book, it says, the determined marksmanship from the walls took its toll on the Shawnees. One Indian had his knee shattered while hiding behind a stump close to the wall. Another was shot by 3 riflemen while lounging on a fence as much as 300 yards away. The advantage of the long rifle over the British musket was proven again and again. It took longer to reload the rifle than the musket, but even that problem had been lessened. Neil O'Hammond has written, some unknown genius discovered that a greased patch placed over the bullet lessened the time needed to reload, and it became a gas check to utilize the full force of the exploding powder. Shot for shot, the rifle would kill more men at a greater distance, using only half the powder and lead.
Wow.
Finally, on Thursday night, September 17, 10 days after Blackfish's army had arrived, the Shawnees made their maximum effort to burn the fort. Fire seemed their only hope, and again they rushed forward to fling torches onto the roofs. They had, however, learned their lesson and tried to conceal the torches with blankets until the last moment before the torch was thrown. Fire arrows were shot also, but they had little effect. The firing from both sides was so intense, the sky was lit up with exploding gunpowder. Moses Boone, who was 10 years old, later recalled that the light was so bright any article could be plainly seen to be picked up even to a pin.
That's cool.
That's nuts. There's 400 Indians shooting at the, I don't know how many are shooting, but,
up to 400.
That's a barrage of fire. I mean, that's a lot of fire. I mean, put yourself out there in your mind. You're just in the fort. It's wooded. They're just flinging fire at you in the dark. Just arrow after arrow. There's no music. You know what I mean? It's not like the movies. Tim's. This is just raw. On Friday morning, the Shawnee camp in the even to a pin. William Patton, who had been away hunting when the siege began, hid in the woods, watching the assault from a distant hill. The fires were so bright, the shouting so intense, the whoops of the Indians and screams of the women and children in the fort so loud, he was sure Boonesboro had fallen and made his way to Logan Station to announce the sad news. In fact, the roofs of several cabins were set afire that night. Men and women rushed to tear away burning boards, throw water on burning logs. Luckily, it began to rain during the night. How lucky
Providence,
is that?
bro. That's what that's called.
And many Indians who had carried torches to the walls were killed. As the rain put out the last fires, all got quiet. Dude, it rained.
I love that.
On Friday morning, the Shawnee camp in the peach orchard appeared to be abandoned. A few shots were fired from here and there, but the firing got more and more distant. Some bands of Indians seemed to be going north toward the Ohio, others southwest toward Logan Station and Harrisburg, and still others south. Fearing a ploy, those in the fort waited until afternoon before opening the gate and venturing out. They saw where the tunnel from the river had caved in because of the heavy rain and found the remains of several large torches that had been intended to set the stockade on fire. They discovered the camp in the peach orchard really was deserted. The Shawnees and the British militia had gone. They had taken with them all the bodies of Indians killed, but left Pompey's body lying near the river.
A little rude.
They must not have liked him either. Boone examined the tracks and found that about 30 Indians, probably Cherokees, had headed south. Other bands had disappeared toward the other settlements. It was later learned that Blackfish had agreed that the warriors could take some scalps and lives from the other settlements as so not to return empty-handed to their Ohio towns. Blackfish knew from the beginning it was unlikely he could take Boonesboro in a siege. There is only one instance in Kentucky history of Indians or anyone else without artillery taking a palisaded and defended fort. That's Kinclow's Station in September. It was 1782, so about 6 years before this. That's why the chief had been willing to negotiate, hoping for a surrender. His attempt to seize hostages at the treaty ceremony was his best hope for victory. Siege had never been a Shawnee style of warfare. They were most effective at small raids, ambushes, and surprise attacks on isolated cabins and settlements. Their genius was for the decoy and ambush. After the siege was called off, it's like the one Indian move every time. And what kills you when you read a history book are the new soldiers that roll out, and they do this little, thing where the Indian group looks like an easy group to beat. And they lure them out of the fort,
bait and switch,
and they run and they run. They come until they get totally ambushed and massacred. And you're like, dude, how did you not see that coming? Honestly. You must seriously underestimate your enemy. Your arrogance must be ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You must have such an overassurance. Like, I don't know, man.
I've never heard of a British person like that, Brian.
It says a good many of the livestock had been killed by enemy fire and eaten by the defenders of the fort. The cows and horses, hogs and chickens that had survived were half starved, and as soon as it was clear the Shawnees were gone, men hurried out into the gardens that were left and gathered cabbages to feed the stock. Some cattle outside had been killed by the Indians, and others were taken when the Shawnees withdrew. At least one cow that was led away got loose and returned to the fort a few days later with a strap of buffalo hide tied to her horns dragging behind her.
Good girl.
The people of Boonesboro stepped out of the stockade into the open carefully, blinking to see if their freedom and survival were real. A sweet wind leaned across the peach orchard where so many Shawnees had camped. They inspected the collapsed tunnel from the river that had come so close to the fort's wall. Some think that if Boonesboro had fallen, the other forts in Kentucky would likely have been taken also. The British and their Indian allies would have been free to attack the western settlements of North Carolina, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Boone sat down to write to Rebecca back in North Carolina to tell her of the ordeal and survival of the settlement. He told her that they had lost 2 men, Bundren and London, and that 4 people had been wounded, including himself, Jemima Squire, and Pemberton Rawlins.
So basically, the Boone clan took the brunt of it. Wounds, anyways. Some people died.
Pemberton had a broken arm by a bullet. He estimated the Shawnee had lost 37 braves.
Didn't they lose a guy got shot in the head too? They not mention him?
That's Brundon.
Okay.
He estimated that the Shawnee had lost 37 braves. In the letter, Boone described his months of captivity with the Shawnees, his daring escape. So he's telling his wife about all of it. He told her he would return to North Carolina for his family as soon as he could, but at the moment he had to defend himself against a charge of treason from Richard Calloway and Benjamin Logan.
Gosh, Calloway.
A court-martial had been scheduled, and officers of the recently arrived Virginia militia would hear the case. Boone showed his anger against the British, swearing uncharacteristically in the letter to Rebecca, God damn them, he wrote. They had set the Indians on us. Daniel Bryan, Rebecca's cousin, recalled the sentence many years later, and he remembered that Rebecca was so offended by the profanity, she had the oath cut out of the letter after it was read to her and burned it. Others present also recalled that Boone mentioned the court-martial in the letter. So,
No cursing.
no cursing.
They're real serious about that.
Yeah, he was mad. He was mad at the British for sending the Indians.
Yeah.
Pissed off at Hamilton. That if anything, Hamilton only enraged the settlers to turn.
Why? What's wrong with scalping your neighbors?
To turn on the British. Like if the British had fought you, that's one thing.
Yeah. Bro, it's one
There's
thing.
something dirty about it that just, yeah.
It's a bounty. It's like collecting like coyote tails or something. Like it's a creepy thing for a human being to scalp another human being for money.
When Boone talked to Filson 5 years afterward, he neglected to refer to the trial for treason. It was probably the greatest humiliation of his life, and he rarely talked about it later. After his extraordinary efforts to save Boonesboro from attack in February, to save the salt boilers at the Blue Licks, run the gauntlet, play his maneuver with Blackfish and the British at Detroit, escape and walk back to Boonesboro in 4 days, furiously complete the fortification of Boonesboro, lead a dangerous scouting raid into Ohio, and finally organize and supervise the defense through an 11-day siege, he was to be tried for attempting to betray the settlement. Yeah, I'd be pissed.
I'd be pissed too,
I'd
dude.
want to kill Calloway.
I would. What a rat. What a rat.
A few days after the siege ended, Kenton and Alexander Montgomery returned from Ohio, where Boone had left them to scout and spy on the Shawnees, and a company of militia arrived from Virginia to relieve the 3 forts. But it is likely Boone was mostly occupied with the approaching court-martial. We know the details of the court-martial proceedings because a young trader named Daniel Trabu was present at Logan Station when it occurred. Trabu wrote an account of his time in Kentucky, and the account was preserved and is now published. When the court-martial was held at Logan Station, a number of settlers from the region attended. Out of loyalty to Boone, few ever mentioned it later, and apparently the records of the proceedings were destroyed. According to Trabu, the charges brought by Calloway and Logan were, in Draper's transcription, the following. 1. That Boone had taken 26 men to make salt at the Blue Licks, and the Indians had caught him trapping for beaver 10 miles below the licking, and he voluntarily surrendered his men to at the licks to the enemy. The Indians knew they were there. They're burning fire from 50,000 miles away. You could see the fire smoking. It wasn't some secret. I mean, Calloway, you're such an ass.
Yeah.
Like,
they're having a bonfire out in the woods for days.
For days. You don't think they knew that they were at the Blue Licks? That when a prisoner, he engaged with Governor Hamilton to surrender the people of Boonesboro to be removed to Detroit and live under British protection and jurisdiction. By his actions, he did not do that.
He stood there and fought.
Right. That returning from captivity, dude, this is just a petty, petty man who literally doesn't care about the truth. Richard Calloway is one of those people. He does not care what's true and what's false. He cares what he wants. That's all I can see here. Because if you didn't have derangement syndrome here, Boone derangement syndrome, you could see it for some reality.
Dude, he's a little gremlin of a man.
That returning from captivity, he encouraged a party of men to accompany him to the Paint Lick town, weakening the garrison at a time when the arrival of an Indian army was daily expected to attack the fort. No, he was going out there to scout, and he did discover information and hustle back. Talk about twisting everything he did. Like, no, this is where that saying, no good deed goes unpunished. It's like he is literally trying to twist everything he did into some ulterior motive that's
negative. He'd make
negative.
a killer politician today, though. He'd kill.
That preceding the attack on Boonesboro, he was willing to take the officers of the fort on pretense of making peace to the Indian camp beyond the protection of guns of the garrison. No, he was just buying time. In conclusion, Colonel Calloway charged that Boone favored the British cause and had used every opportunity to further the Tory effort. He urged that Boone be stripped of his commission in the Kentucky County Militia. Boone remained silent while all the charges were made. Finally, he rose to defend himself, explaining that he had surrendered the men at the Blue Licks in February to save their lives. Captain Daniel Boone said the reason he give up. This is bear with me as I try to read the way they
speak.
Spelled stuff back then. Says, quote, Captain Daniel Boone said the reason he gave up these men at the Blue Licks was that the Indians, everything's misspelled, told him they were going to Boonesboro to take the fort. Boone said he thought he would use some stratagem. Otherwise, they would have been killed and Boonesboro attacked when it was defenseless. It was true he had pretended friendship with the British at Detroit, but only as a way of buying time and saving himself and the other prisoners. He had made the expedition to Paint Lick Town to find out where the Shawnees were. He had negotiated with Blackfish outside the stockade to buy time. His men had never been beyond the rifle range of the fort, as was proved in the melee after the final negotiation. His escape from the Shawnees, his rebuilding of the fort, his actions during the siege, proved his loyalty to Boonesboro and the American cause. By the way, I can't imagine that Calloway has very many real friends. He just has those hater kind of friends. The other kinds of bullies that just want to play victim in life and hate on everybody and bitch.
I can't imagine how he's thinking he's going to get away with this, because there were other people in the fort who clearly are going to be on Boone's side.
After Boone made his presentation, the presiding officers deliberated among themselves. You know what's funny, though, is this is 1778 or whatever. Dude, just go back and listen to a Shakespearean play. Go back and read some Greek mythology, some history. Like, human beings we tend to act like the thing that kills me, I guess, what I'm trying to get at is humans be humans. Humans be humaning. Like, humans, nature, and the follies and the weaknesses, you can go back to the story of what is it, Narcissa, or you can go back to just early Greek stories, and Helen of Troy. You can do Hercules and Achilles, and you can kind of just break down all these stories that are thousands of years old, and we're still repeating them over and over again.
It's because nobody reads history books, Brian.
But I think too that it's just human nature is what it is, and we can all try to rise above it, overcome it. Try to conquer, I guess, the devil in each of us,
That carnal man.
but and we all should. Yet there are those who
Fail spectacularly.
of course.
Looking at you, Calloway.
But yeah, so it says after Boone made his presentation, the presiding officers deliberated among themselves. The accusers, Boone, those looking on, waited in the charged air. In a short while, the officers pronounced Boone innocent of all charges. To show their respect for him and his actions in the defense of Boonesboro, they recommended that he be promoted to the rank of major. Almost everyone there except Calloway and Logan, and perhaps Andrew Johnson, who had spread the rumor of Boone's treachery in the first place, was happy with the outcome.
What a bunch of turds. Seriously, just a bunch of sad sacks.
Isn't this so funny, though, that after hearing all of it and stuff, that they're like, yeah, you're innocent, and you're promoted to major. This is why haters, they do their damage. They do their best.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a winner, you're a winner.
Here's the thing. In order for a hater to really hurt you or have much effect on you, you have to let them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're too weak to really hurt you unless you let them.
Not all of them, but yeah.
The majority.
In a sense, I
They're
get what you're
bullying.
saying. So, yeah, he gets promoted, and it says... yeah, everyone was happy except those three buttholes. As far as we know, Boone never spoke to Calloway ever again.
You know what? That's smart.
When he returned to Kentucky the next year, he moved 6 miles north of Boonesboro and cleared a new place in the wilderness called Boone's Station. Hell yeah. Leave that punk
For real,
behind.
dude.
Trabu's final comment on the court-martial, this is the guy who was recording it, who was there,
Trabu.
was, quote, Boone, after that time, appeared always to be on the side of this government. However, Colonel Calloway and Captain Ben Logan was not pleased about it. One of the best statements of support for Boone at this time came from Simon Kenton, who knew the complex dangers of the frontier as well as anyone. Remember, Simon Kenton's a badass, and he's the guy that carried Boone after he got shot in the ankle.
Okay, yeah.
And Kenton was the guy who barreled through the crowd, and like they just bulldozed. They were like
Headbutted the other.
Boone's like when they got cut off from the fort, and they were like, "We're dead, boys. Give them hell. Die standing." Like they just rushed the Indians and bust through, and so that's Kenton, and he says Boone at this time came from Kenton. One of the best statements says, when told of the accusations against Boone, his response was quick. Quote, with an emphatic nod of his head, he replied, "They may say what they please of Daniel Boone. He acted with wisdom in that matter." While the characterization of Richard Calloway has come down to us, is of a quarrelsome, defensive man, he was also recognized as bold and brave, instrumental in the survival of Boonesboro. And Benjamin Logan was one of the notable men of his time, rising to high rank in the militia, almost elected governor of Kentucky later. It is important to consider what it was about Boone that irritated and aroused the suspicions of these men so thoroughly. Certainly his familiarity with the Indians made him suspect, but Logan and Calloway may have sensed that in some ways, Boone, like other gifted and innovative people, played the role of double agent throughout much of his life. It could be said that in that doubleness, seeing the world at once from two or more points of view and acting on that multiple vision, lies the very essence of originality and greatness. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote in The Crack-Up The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. It was possible, this difference, this knack for dealing with Indians, this doubleness that made men such as Calloway and Logan suspect and despise Boone. It was that knack that made them hate him. Complex and original people know that truth is rarely simple. Almost never all of this or all of that, but elusive minglings and mixtures, evolving shapes with tinctures of irony and paradox. Boone's actions often reveal his understanding and even relish for the complexity and shadings of experience. He could not have played the roles he did if at times he had not been essentially an Indian. At other times, a patient, solitary explorer and beholder of the wild, and at other times still a leader of settlers, a surveyor, a trader, a soldier, a legislator.
Counter argument on Calloway.
Uh-huh.
Okay, maybe he is a good guy, but two things can be true at once. His jealousy might have just gotten way out of control, and he just let it run rampant.
They didn't say he was a good guy necessarily.
Said he was brave.
They said that he was brave. I know a lot of guys that are blinded a-holes, but are tough.
I could think of one.
You know, if you were going to be in a fight, you'd want them on your side.
Yeah.
But they'll also, like a snake, turn on you and attribute the worst motives to any of your actions that aren't real, you know, and they're jealous of another man's success. There are men who are
That's what I wonder is it just that Boone is successful and he can't handle it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I think it is.
He has an ego. Calloway has an ego, and he cannot stand another alpha male in his presence. Period. He can't stand the idea of another alpha male being there, taking charge, being looked up to, being listened to, leading the show, all that kind of stuff. It just rankles him, and he just looks to find fault. But it's so funny because these three guys come out and they testify. They're the only three, right? And then everyone else is like, yeah, not feeling that.
Not buying it, bro.
No. So anyway, you'll like this though.
Oh, good.
Though Richard Calloway would be killed by Indians within 18 months, his body scalped and mutilated and rolled into a mud hole. Yes! The Calloway family kept stories of Boone's alleged treason alive for the next century. Does that make me a bad man? I don't think so. It just feels like, you know, he lives another year and a half, Calloway, and he gets killed by Indians, and he gets scalped and mutilated and rolled into a mud hole. I don't know. It feels a little karma-ish to me.
It does.
You know?
A little bit.
It's just like you're just too arrogant, too much of a you know, Boone lived till he was 86. Although, you know, anybody could have died at any time during this period. Somehow Boone seems to he seems to dodge and weave, bro. He seems to bob and weave and escape those things. But it says, it's so, yeah, the Calloway family kept stories of Boone's alleged treason alive for the next century. So even though he dies, the whole family keeps this narrative alive for the next 100 years.
Bro, I don't got that kind of hate.
That's what I mean.
Don't.
You have to have a serious grudge kind of personality. You have to have some, like, you just nurse hatred and resentment. Like, you're that person.
Here's the thing about that kind of resentment and that kind of hatred. It is a living thing that you have to continuously feed with your time, attention, and energy to keep it alive.
It's like,
I'm too lazy for that. Never gonna happen.
It's like Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Cain is just the perpetual hater, the whiner. My sacrifice isn't good enough. It's not my fault.
It was a shiesty sacrifice. It was like a pear. Chill.
He hates his brother who's just winning all the time, and who God is pleased with. And he's like, and it just he nurses it. He nurses the resentment. He nurses the hatred. He nurses the injustice he feels until he kills his own ideal and his brother. It's just there in that story, let's say it's among one of the oldest stories on record of human record, is the story of human beings. Like, which path do you choose? Which way of life do you live? Which mode of being do you select? The Cain mode, or the Abel?
Can I go
mode?
the Abel without the rock in the head? Is that an option?
Sure.
Cool.
You
I'm
can
going down that road.
Go down that road, but it wouldn't be as much of a story if that happened.
I'm reading online. It says Calloway was ambushed on his way outside by Boone's barrow. Was he by himself?
He was working on a river bank or something, and the book goes into it. He was working on a river bank, like with doing ship transit stuff, and he got
Sculpt.
ambushed. So Indians killed him. It says, in all their versions of Boone's offenses, it was his ease and friendliness with the Indians that figured most prominently in their accusations. Honestly, I think that the Calloway clan is very much they're racist bigots, to the core. Like, I think there's a degree of they hate Indians so much, and the only good Indian is a dead Indian, to the point where the fact that he liked Indians and got along with Indians just made them hate his guts.
Yep.
His friendship with the Shawnees was usually advanced as evidence of his disloyalty to the American cause, as if no one who got along as well with Indians was to be trusted. Right? The fact of his friendship with Blackfish was evidence enough of treachery. Quote, Boone never deserved anything of the country, Calloway's daughter Kezia would later say. The dream of cooperation and peace between whites and Indians that Cornstalk and Boone and many others had shared was lost forever in the rage of the Revolution, in the fires fanned by the British on the frontier, and in the greed and fear of the relentless stream of settlers into the western lands. Yeah.
But what gets me is Jemima married one of the Calloways.
Yeah, she did. She married one of the sons. But you know how that goes. I mean,
In-laws.
There's often one kid in the family who doesn't. They got 5 brothers and sisters that suck, and their parents suck. But there's one sane one among them that's just like, dude, I don't know, man. I can't. I'm with the Boones, man.
Yeah.
Like, Sam, I get it. I get it. Like, I can't stand them either. I can't stand my own family. Everybody has those. So, anyway, well, we just got one little bit more. Might as well read it. Might as well get through it. So it says, as soon as he was acquitted and promoted at Logan Station, Boone made preparations to go to his family in the Yadkin. Remember, his wife already left, so she hasn't been there the whole time, neither has his whole family. The only one that stayed behind was Jemima.
That's right. She was waiting for her dad to show back up.
Mm-hmm.
Good girl. And
as he traveled east, he met a company militia on their way to reinforce the settlements in Kentucky. It says... traveling with Boone to the Yadkin were Jemima and Flanders Calloway. Is Flanders Richard Calloway's son? You might check on that. Flanders Calloway. I think Flanders is a hilarious name.
I know. Hi diddly ho. Every time.
I cannot say the name without The Simpsons just popping up every time. And they traveled with his son-in-law, William Hayes. Okay. It says... Boone and his party reached the Yadkin on November 1778, but we have few details of the reunion. He and his large family lived that winter in the cabin belonged to...
What was Dingleberry Calloway, the guy who got scalped and thrown in the mud hole? What was his
Richard
first name?
Calloway.
Richard?
Mm-hmm.
It says his father's name was James Calloway.
So it must be his uncle is Richard.
What was it? James...
Flanders Calloway.
And what was the other? John?
It just said Flanders Calloway and Richard Calloway.
Yeah, I don't see Richard popping up anywhere among his family.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Boone and his party reached the Yadkin. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they stayed there. There has been much speculation about the trouble between Daniel and Rebecca that winter. Speaking to Filson, Boone would only say, quote, "The history of my going home and returning with my family forms a series of difficulties, an account of which would swell a volume." It's just too much to talk about, man. It could fill books and books how coming home caused some problems. It says Nathan Boone, who was not even born until almost 3 years later, said the differences between Rebecca and Daniel at the time were caused by her reluctance to return to Kentucky. I don't blame her. She had endured 3 years of hardship in Kentucky, lost her oldest son to Indians, survived one major attack on Boonesboro, assumed that she had returned to North Carolina a widow with a family of many children. She had already survived more than most women in several lifetimes. Why would she want to go back to Kentucky, however enthusiastic and committed to the settlement Daniel was? Some have implied that this was the time when Rebecca presented Boone with the, quote, surprise baby that could not possibly have been his. But this suggestion confuses two different periods in the Boones' marriage. His supposed return to Virginia after being out just hunting for years and years. No child was born to Rebecca between 75 and 81. Others have suggested that Rebecca's Tory sympathies, or her sympathies toward the British Empire, made her reluctant to return to Kentucky. Some of her kin were committed to the Loyalist cause, and a few fought for the British. After Boone's disappearance and presumed death, they might have persuaded her of the rightness of the royal cause. I mean, we're talking about a political upheaval going on right now. On the other hand, no one ever reported Rebecca making a statement of sympathy for the British side. So it is possible the rumors of Boone taking a Shawnee wife in Chillicothe had reached Rebecca's ears. When Andrew Johnson returned to Harrodsburg and Boonesboro and told everyone how happy Boone was among the Shawnees, he may have added that detail. Imagine a wife worried about her missing husband, hearing that he is living content among the Shawnees, adopted by the chief with an Indian bride.
Good Lord, he's going to get both barrels when he comes home.
There is no firm evidence that this happened, but it is possible that it did, or that Rebecca thought it did. If this was the case, she may have taken it badly, having already heard of his friendly relations with the Indians and his life of ease and privilege among the Shawnees. What is certain is that Boone spent much of the winter, spring, and summer recruiting families to resettle in Kentucky.
Ugh.
It was one of his special gifts. He was always able to persuade others to join his moves to new lands. His enthusiasm, confidence, and charisma were brought out by this activity. He was a storyteller who inspired others with his tales of adventure, of the wonderful land across the mountains, and the promise of a glorious future. Rebecca may have looked upon her husband for a time as a kind of Pied Piper who led others to danger and their doom.
She's not wrong.
He never gets killed.
That's what I was going to say, man. Like, he's just like, he's a main character. Main characters can't die.
He's not an
Yeah.
NPC or whatever they call it.
Dude. Everyone around him is wearing a red
Non-player
shirt.
character. Yeah. So there you have it. It still ain't over yet. It gets wild. But yeah. That's Boonesboro. How interesting though, as you hear this, they still continue to have Indian woes and get attacked and do crazy things. But we're getting toward the end of the period that he's the most famous for, the things that he accomplished during that time. It's pretty crazy to think about it all. What a wild set of events. And you could easily see how, yeah, man, you have so much going on right now with all the things he did to sort of make it happen that they survived in Boonesboro, that the fort never fell. Because if you think about it, Boone is the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boone is the key. When they were at the Blue Licks, the wall wasn't finished. The fort wasn't done. It wasn't even close.
They've been ran through.
It was all women. Not all women, but
majority.
They had 26 men at the Blue Licks is what it was. I said 30, but it was 26, I think, plus Boone. So 27 men that were probably just going to get killed by the Indians, who didn't get killed because of the negotiation. They got adopted, taken into the Shawnees, and then the others got sold back into the British, which then became, who knows how all that stuff shook out in the end. But nobody died. All lives were saved. He then runs from the Indians, after pretending to be with them and talking to the British and all that. And what was it, in over 100 miles in 3 days, he gets back to the fort, and they rebuild the fort. Now, without Boone doing that, without him tricking everyone, playing the double agent, making it work, and then planning his escape. This wasn't like he just was like, you know what, I'm going to run back to the fort. And no, he had a gun. He had been squirreling away powder.
He had a barrel,
parts of guns, like he had been hiding all sorts of stuff for the occasion. And knowing that they were getting ready to go onto the fort and he knew he had to get there first, he made his run for it. And as far as he knew, Rebecca was still there.
Yeah.
And his whole family.
Yeah.
And everything that mattered to him. And so he ran back to the fort. And then to get there and realize Rebecca was gone. Jemima was still there, but no one else.
They could have bounced.
And they all could have ran away, but they didn't. And then they built up the walls of the fort. And they spent all that time fortifying it. If he hadn't warned them, if he hadn't told them, in fact, it sounds like because he had rushed out there, it sounds like Blackfish postponed for another year, 6 months, the siege, because he's like, crap, I don't want to show up out there only to, because now they've been warned. I need to get more Indians. I need to get hundreds of Indians. Reality was they would have been so much better off had they just got there before the fortifications were built.
Yeah,
right?
Which is what was going to happen, but Boone stepped in, intervened.
Boone got there, and in the end, they fought it out, and it was 11 days.
11 days.
And they survived, most of them, not very many losses, and the whole thing diffused, and then he's back with his wife. But all of that stuff happens. It could have turned out total opposite, like gone a whole different direction if Boone hadn't made each of those calculated moves. And he was the mastermind, the player, the key figure in all of these moves, right? It wasn't somebody else. He was like a lone wolf doing all this. So you could see why a man like Calloway would resent him, because Boone's crafty, charismatic, wily.
I'm guessing everything he's not. Stab in the dark.
Likable. So anyway, pretty crazy. And the man is confident and gifted. Like, he's like, sure, I'll roll out and talk to Blackfish. Hey, dude, I just want to come see my wife. Why did you leave us? He's Chautawi, right?
He's Chautawi.
So, and then after the Indians, they battle it out and the Indians leave. It's just to be accused of that from a guy from Callaway. It's just like the court-martial hearing and all that. Just pathetic. And it didn't stick at all. By the time they were done. But I like how they said Boone never spoke to Callaway again.
Yep. Would you?
No, I made it a rule.
What a waste of breath.
There's certain people that I have given opportunities to, like lots of, I try to be forgiving. But I learned as I got older that there are some people who are just toxic. And those people just need to be exorcised from your life. Just cut out. And I'm ruthless about that. Cut you out, block your phone. You're dead to me. You will never be in my life again.
Yep.
Because I gave you, it's always that fool me once, fool me twice. I get to a point where it's not that I don't still care there's always a connection. There's things I still value about the individual that are special talents that they had, but I also recognize the toxicity there. And so I just mourn the loss of the relationship. And I don't hate the person.
Mm-hmm.
I just won't let them in because there's no trust there. And you move forward. But you don't let them in. You just can't. You can't let a narcissist in. You just can't let people in that are manipulators and toxic like that. You just got to move on. And man, what a relief it is when those people are not in your life anymore.
You don't realize it till they're gone too.
Yeah. So we're going to read a little bit more. There's a few more interesting facts, but we're really drawing to the close here of Boone's story. So we'll probably summarize it. I won't read a ton of the book. I highly recommend that people get the book and that you read it, support the author. It's called Boone, a Biography, written by Robert Morgan. And, you know, there's hundreds of pages left that are pretty fascinating where you can learn about, because kind of what happens next is, you know, he's still a fairly youngish man and they're carving out their life on the frontier. But then it becomes this thing where it gets more and more settled. And then he becomes a surveyor, right? And that you can get attacked during that time, but not like you used to. America becomes America, you know, with its independence. And then the book is fascinating. I'd say that period of Boone's life, where he becomes like a city man, you know, he's in the city councils, and he's a politician basically, and all that. He's just not suited for it. He's not suited to be a businessman either, although he's kind of good at whatever he tries for the most part. He just doesn't have the drive and the follow through. But all of that's a whole span in the book that's quite interesting, and there's a lot to learn there. But it's when he gets a little bit older and he's like, screw this. Screw being the city life. I just want to trap and hunt, and with my arthritis in the mountains. And it's and there's more wild stories, and you're just like, dude, the man is to his core a creature of the wilderness. I mean,
I love that.
It's what he is. So anyway, we'll kind of jump into one or two episodes, whatever it takes to sort of close out the rest of the story. But I'm hoping everybody is getting a lot out of this, the history and the context here of our past, and getting some value from it. We really appreciate you tuning in. And as always, if you want to support the show, you can always like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment or a review on our podcast. And I guess, do those things. Share it. Share the podcast. Share it with as many of your friends and families, parents, and others that you can, that you think would find it interesting. And that helps us out tremendously. So thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying our new Dueling Pistols podcast. Remember, it's only here temporarily on the Gritty channel.
Short time.
If you want to subscribe to the main show, head on over to our YouTube channel, Dueling Pistols, and subscribe over there. And anywhere that you get your podcast, you can subscribe there. Thanks for supporting us.
We're on all platforms.
Yeah, we're out there. Find it over there. And tell a friend.
Yeah.
Tell a friend about our new show.
Tell all your friends.
Help us grow it bigger.
We're just going to turn this to an ASMR.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next episode.